Let's start with some questions. What type of channels allow for the propagation of an action potential across the surface of a muscle cell? Voltage gated. Which of the following stays the same length when filaments slide? The A band. What ion triggers the movement of troponin to expose actin's active site? Calcium. To which of the following does ATP bind? Myosin heads. When is energy released? ATP splits into ADP and phosphate. Muscle tension develops from the events that occur during excitation-contraction coupling. So we'll be looking at some muscle tension graphs in this section. Excitation-contraction coupling, as you probably know, is the link between the generation of the action potential in the sarcolemma and the start of the muscle contraction. The steps in order are 1. Neural control, 2. Excitation, 3. Calcium ion release, 4. Contraction cycle begins, 5. Sarcomeres shorten, 6. Muscle tension is produced. The neural control, the action potential in the motor neuron starts the process at the neuromuscular junction. The excitation. The action potential causes the release of acetylcholine from the motor neuron. From that axon terminal, acetylcholine is released by exocytosis into the gap. This leads to excitation in the sarcolemma. The sarcolemma is the membrane of the muscle fiber. Calcium ion release. The muscle fiber action potential travels throughout the muscle fiber through the T-tubules, and it triggers the release of the calcium that's stored in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. 4. Contraction cycle begins. The calcium binds to troponin, which moves to expose the active site on actin. Cross bridges form. This continues while the ATP calcium is available, and action potentials are still generated at the neuromuscular junction. 5. The sarcomeres shorten. The thick and thin filaments, myosin and actin, interact. They're sliding filaments and they move closer together. This shortens the sarcomeres and pulls the ends of the muscle fiber closer to each other. 6. Muscle tension is produced. The muscle fiber shortening causes the entire muscle to shorten. Muscle contraction produces a pull or a tension on the tendons. You can pause this and watch the video from the, not from this, but you'd have to go to the original PowerPoint in Moodle. The tension is greatest when muscle fibers are stimulated at optimum length. So how that sarcomere affects the tension is that the muscle fiber is either producing tension or it's relaxed. It's either contracted or relaxed. The optimal resting length of a sarcomere produces the most tension. There's when the sarcomere is wider, there will be more cross bridges that can form, producing more tension. The normal range of the sarcomere length is between 75 and 130% of optimal length. Muscle arrangement, connective tissues, and bones usually prevent too much stretching or compression. So at the optimal length here at the start, the greatest tension produced is due to the maximum number of cross bridges formed. This reduces the size of the zone of overlap, so fewer cross bridges are formed and reduced tension. The zero zone of overlap reduced in zero tension due to no interactions at all between the thin and thick filaments. A muscle twitch is just a single contraction-relaxation sequence in one muscle fiber. This is a twitch. Fasciculation is an involuntary muscle twitch under the skin. And this is from the contraction of a motor unit. A motor unit is a group of muscle fibers controlled by a single motor neuron. This graph is a myogram, and it shows the development of muscle tension. So you can see that the deep muscle of the calf, the soleus, is slower to contract and longer to relax. The phases of a muscle twitch include latent period. The action potential has stimulated the sarcolemma, and calcium has been released from the SR, but there's no tension yet. Once the calcium binds to the troponin and there's cross bridges forming, the contraction phase occurs, and it's the start of tension, and it will develop to peak or maximal tension. The relaxation phase is when the calcium levels drop, the cross bridges detach, and the active sites are covered again. The tensions will return to resting level. From peak tension to the end of the twitch is about 25 milliseconds. And here are the lengths of time for a twitch in a muscle fiber: latent period, contraction phase, relaxation phase. The peak tension developed by the skeletal muscle depends on the frequency of stimulation and the number of muscle fibers that are actually being stimulated. There are 4 levels of muscle tension: TREP, wave summation, incomplete tetanus, and complete tetanus. TREP, or German for staircase, shows the stimulation of the muscle fiber immediately after relaxation. And this is going to produce increasing tension, increasing maximum tension. Most skeletal muscles do not demonstrate this. Wave summation is the addition of one twitch to another. So there's a stimulus, the muscle contracts, but before the relaxation period ends, there's another stimulus. So there's continual stimuli before complete relaxation. Incomplete tetanus is a rapid cycle of contraction relaxation producing near peak tension. You see contraction and relaxation, but it's a very rapid stimulus. With complete tetanus, there's no relaxation. It's a higher stimulation frequency. No calcium ions return to the sarcoplasmic reticulum. There's peak tension, continuous contraction, like a Charlie horse. You've felt that before. Tetanus, we all get tetanus shots to prevent tetanus. Tetanus is caused by a bacterium called Clostridium tetani, and it's found in all soils, but if it's injected deep into the foot or through the skin, it grows in these fairly anaerobic conditions, producing a toxin that causes full body tetanus or lockjaw and death. The muscles contract so vigorously that it can actually break bones. A motor unit is the number of here's a motor unit. So here is a single motor neuron, let's say the purple one, and you can see that it is stimulating a variety of muscle fibers. So the motor unit is the single motor neuron and all the muscle fibers that it controls. So it may control many fibers or it may control a few. The fewer fibers that are controlled by that neuron allows more precise control. So when we need more tension, well, at first the small motor units are activated, and then more and more motor units are activated. And this will allow a steady increase in muscle tension. Asynchronous motor unit summation. The motor units are activated on rotating basis to maintain a sustained contraction. Muscle tone is the resting tension in a skeletal muscle. A variable number of motor units are always active to produce low-level tension. There's no movement, just a slight contraction, and it's regulated subconsciously. Activated muscle fibers use energy, so increased muscle tone raises energy consumption, and you would have a higher resting metabolism.